This is not a test. This is an emergency broadcast transmission.
Information provision that covers for people how not using cash is better to protect yourself against crime, and how if you use digital money, you can graduate from payments to credit. And that, of course, enhances financial inclusion.
Financial inclusion. All right, guys, welcome back. So this means that there's going to be some financial exclusion. That is the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva, and she had a workshop on new forms of solidarity with Vatican City. She spoke to the Holy Father and ministers and distinguished guests, saying she was truly honored to be with them together with the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, and that they have new priorities for the global economy. And the short answer came in the words of Pope Francis: the first task is put the economy at the service of the people. Well, what kind of economy do you think that we're looking towards with regards to the Vatican, in regards to the IMF, and what are they working on right now to bring together? Because they're telling us straightly that they have digital currencies, they say, for financial inclusion, which means that there's going to be financial exclusion. As the Bible talks about, there's going to be a time coming where no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name or the number of the beast. The Bible has told us these things. There are things that they're going to want us to do in order to be included in their new financial system that is coming to pass right now. And it is just this week that the Digital Currency Monetary Authority unveils its white paper for an international central bank digital currency. It says last week at the International Monetary Fund Spring Meetings 2023, the Digital Currency Monetary Authority announced their official launch of Universal Monetary Unit UMU Unicoin, an international central bank digital currency. So what is this digital currency that we're looking towards? Well, it's the currency that was spoken of in Bible prophecy when they said no man might buy or sell save he that has the name or the number or the mark of the beast. Because the beast is none other than the papacy. If you read Revelation 12 and 13 very carefully, you'll note that the dragon, which was pagan Rome, gives its power to papal Rome. Beasts in Bible prophecy are kingdoms, as we read in Daniel 7:23. The Pope would actually control the economy in the future, in the near future, using the kings of the earth, if we read Revelation 17 as well very carefully. As was prophesied in the Bible, the Pope calls for transformation of the economy for the common good. And the Pope is meeting with entrepreneurs. He's meeting with Visa, MasterCard, all the main bankers, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and they're all working together. So as you're watching all these world events come to pass, you'll realize that God's word is truth. Now again, Pope Francis calls for a new economic model to rebuild post-coronavirus world. So this is what we're looking at, is a new economic model. What does that economic model include according to Rome? Well, the Times of Malta tells us digital economy is for the common good. So therefore, Pope Francis wants this new economic model, and he's calling for a transformation of economy for the common good. A digital economy for the common good is what they're telling us. Now, Revelation chapter 17:4 tells us that the woman, that's the papacy, that's the church, was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. If we read our Bibles carefully, we'll understand that a woman in Bible prophecy symbolizes a church. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. A picture says 1,000 words, but here's a few pictures for you to kind of explain the priestly colors are purple and scarlet. Furthermore, she's decked with gold and precious stones. The papacy is loaded with gold and money, and they would have control over the gold and silver, as we're going to come to here in a second. But in Daniel 11:40, we're told that at the time of the end, the king of the south would push at him, which is France, came to take away its power. And the king of the north shall come like a whirlwind, with chariots, with horsemen, and with many ships. And I'm going to get into this prophecy today. And he shall enter in a country, he shall overflow and pass over. This is the king of the north, coming like a whirlwind. This is important Bible prophecy. The Bible tells us in Daniel 11:43 that he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver. In other words, he's going to have power over the economy. It's arrayed in gold and precious stones. We'll come to this. We'll see how this all connects in the book of Revelation chapter 17. But who is this king of the north according to Bible prophecy? Well, letting the Bible interpret itself, Jeremiah 4:6 tells us, set up the standard towards Zion. Retire, stay not, for I will bring evil from the north, a great destruction. The lion has come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. He's gone forth from his place to make thy land desolate, and thy cities shall be laid waste without an inhabitant. The lion was a symbol of Babylon. Babylon is the king of the north. If you read the Bible carefully, the Bible interprets itself. Furthermore, we know that Daniel told us that the king of the north shall come like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and many ships. Jeremiah says this, behold, he shall come up as clouds, and his chariots shall be as a whirlwind. His horses are swifter than eagles. Woe to us, for we are spoiled. Chariots, horsemen, and many ships. And we're going to talk about the many ships here shortly, but listen carefully again. Isaiah 5:28 and 29 tells us, whose arrows are sharp, their bows are bent, their horses' hooves shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Their roaring shall be like a lion, they shall roar like young lions, yea, they shall roar and lay hold of their prey. And a lion in Daniel chapter 7 was symbolized as a beast, which was the first nation to rule the world, which was Babylon. A lion symbolizes Babylon, and Babylon comes from the north. Babylon is the king of the north. And when we read in Jeremiah 25:9, it tells us plainly, behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith the Lord, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land. So it was the king of the north that came against the people of God, Jerusalem, in ancient times. Is it possible that Babylon will come against Jerusalem in this latter day? In fact, who is Jerusalem today? Let's just look. Is it referring to the city in the Middle East over in Israel, or is it something greater? Well, Jeremiah 6 tells us, O ye children of Benjamin, gather yourselves to flee out of the midst of Jerusalem, and blow the trumpet in Tekoa, and set up a sign of fire in Bethakram, for evil appeareth out of the north, and great destruction. Again, Babylon is coming from the north. But notice something, there's a dual application here if you keep reading. In verse 2, he says, I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. This is a woman in Jeremiah 6 that the king of the north would come against, which is namely Zion or Jerusalem. And how do we know who Zion is? Hebrews chapter 12. It talks about us, and it says, you are come unto Mount Zion, unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God the judge of all, and the spirits of just men made perfect. So who is Zion? Who is the church? Jerusalem, as it says in Galatians 4:26, is the mother of us all. So there is a mother in Revelation chapter 12, the church, Jerusalem, and we are the remnant of her seed who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ, Revelation chapter 12 verse 17. But of course there is a mother of us all, Jerusalem, and there is a mother of harlots, Babylon, the mother of harlots, the woman arrayed in purple and scarlet. So there are two mothers, two women in the book of Revelation. And it's important to understand who they are, because Babylon is to be judged. It says in Revelation 17:2 that she is fornicated with the kings of the earth. She is definitely not the bride of Christ, and she is definitely turned away from what Christ would have gave to her. She's committed fornication. She's went to the state power. She does not trust or have faith in God, and she's made all nations drunk with the wine of her fornication. Regarding this king of the north, which is Babylon, it says in Revelation chapter 17:5 that she is Babylon, the mother of harlots. But Daniel chapter 11:43, understanding that Babylon is the king of the north, says that he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver. In other words, the economy. And Revelation 13:17 says that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Remember, Pope Francis is calling for a global COVID-19 recovery plan in a message to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. And who is the leader of the IMF? Remember, we talked about this already. Kristalina Georgieva. Now listen carefully to what she has to say here.
Bear with me on giving you an image and then outlining 3 priorities for CBDCs to help. Here is the image. We have been talking this last couple of days of the difficult time we are in, that our world economy is like a ship in choppy waters. Well, the image we can add to it is thinking of CBDCs as being a new fleet of ships.
So the economy is like a ship in choppy waters. It's about to hit an iceberg. It's about to be destroyed, basically, is what's happening. It's about to sink. And it is sinking right now. And as we notice here, what she's saying is that there's a new fleet of ships coming in. In other words, many ships. And what did the Bible prophecy say? Do you remember what the Bible prophecy said? He shall come with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. Daniel 11 verse 40. And remember, he shall have power over the gold or silver. Now when you think of ships, you think of an army, and that's what we're told. Daniel 11:40, at the time of the end, that the king of the north will come like a whirlwind with chariots, with horsemen, and with many ships. And he's coming. Whirlwind symbolizes war, just as Babylon made. And then, of course, he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver. In other words, power over the economy. Ships are symbolic in the Bible of economy. You'll notice in the book of Revelation 18, when speaking of Babylon, it talks about the ships again. It says the merchants of the earth. That means the people who buy and sell shall weep and mourn. That means the traders shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Remember, there's going to be some buying and selling issues at the end. No man might buy or sell. But it says, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to nothing. And every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea, that means buy or sell by sea, stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? That's what this new digital economy is. It is like a fleet of ships that's coming in, trading by sea, a company of ships. They're going to control the economy. Now, you'll notice that what's happening in the world right now is different economies are collapsing worldwide and making an end of cash. Major Australian bank makes an end of cash withdrawals from some of its branches as the end of paper notes looms. In other words, they're ending cash. It's going to be a cashless society, and they're telling us straight up that this is their plan.
We've taken another step towards a cashless society. A big bank has confirmed customers in some locations can no longer withdraw money over the counter as branches continue to wind back services.
It's up there with the pub with no beer, the bank with no cash. ANZ has confirmed some branches no longer handle cash at the counter. Others are directing customers to smart ATMs for cash transactions. ANZ says only 8% of its customers rely solely on branches. NAB says for its customers, it's only 3%. The number of bank branches nationally dropped 30% in major cities over 5 years, from more than 3,000 to around 2,300.
It's closed down about 12 months ago, so I've got to come down to South Melbourne. And if that closes down, I don't know where I've got to go, so for checks and everything else.
It's a worldwide trend.
It's a worldwide trend. This is not just something that's happening in one place. This is happening all over the world. In fact, the European Union is pushing for the criminalization of physical cash with a new anti-money laundering law. Pushing for the end of cash and criminalization even of cash. And I know I talked about this a few weeks ago, but the Federal Reserve announced their launch in July of FedNow, which was going to be a CBDC, central bank digital currency. That's coming soon. And the economists warn of catastrophic fall in American living standard. This is what's happening as they are getting rid of the dollar and other nations are going away from the dollar. And we're seeing this all come to pass. So as people start to suffer, there's going to be a lot of problems, and people, when they get crazy, they burn down their own cities, as we've already seen with Black Lives Matter and other movements these days. But when Jesus talks about a sign of the end in Matthew 24, he says that the city would be burnt with fire. And remember reading in Revelation 18 that when the shipmasters start to stop trading, well, guess what's going to happen? The cities are going to burn with fire. Babylon would be burnt with fire. But again, Luke 19:41-44, Jesus came near and beheld the city of Jerusalem and wept over it, saying, if thou hadst known. What did Jesus think that we were supposed to know? Because the city was about to be burnt with fire, and he's crying because the people don't know what is coming upon the city. And very similar today, there is a loud cry, Babylon is fallen, come out of her, my people. And the people don't understand what's about to come to pass. They don't see that the cities are about to be burnt with fire. But Jesus said, if you had known, but what was wrong? We're told they did not know the time of their visitation. Jesus gave us many warnings. He told us, when you see these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. And we're told by historians that before the destruction of Jerusalem took place, that a sign was given to the early Christians to flee out of the midst of the city in 67 AD. It says in Great Controversy, page 26, when the idolatrous standards, that's the flags of the Romans, should be set up in the holy ground, which extended some furlongs outside the city walls, then the followers of Christ were to find safety in flight. They were to understand, they were to note and see the sign before the destruction came. It says, when the warning sign should be seen, those who would escape must make no delay. Now Jesus talks about this sign in the book of Matthew 24 when the disciples asked him, what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? Well, it was just recently that the Vatican flag was raised at the United Nations in New York City in 2015. I want to share a little bit more with regards to this event, because this all has to do with basically a new government that would take over the entire world. But in Matthew 24, Jesus talks about the sign of the end. He likens it to what happened in Jerusalem in 70 AD when it was burnt with fire. Very similar to what we're going to see in Revelation 17, that Babylon shall be burnt with fire. Babylon is going to burn, and that's what we're about to watch. Matthew 24:1-2, and Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came in to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all of these things? Verily I say to you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. So Jesus was explaining the destruction in the city to be burnt with fire. But in verse 3, as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? Remember how the sign was given in 67 AD? There was a sign to get out of the city. Very similar to today, God has a sign to come out of Babylon, to flee out of the midst of Babylon, or to flee out of the midst of Judea, or to flee out of the midst of New York City, or whatever city you are in today. God is calling you out of the cities. Matthew 24 gives a lot of signs. There would be wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, and all these things, he said, but the end is not yet. There's going to come another sign called the sign of the end. What shall be the sign of your coming and of the sign of the end? So we're told in Matthew 24:14, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. But next verse tells us what you're to look for. What is your sign? And it says in verse 15, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. In other words, don't misunderstand. Know and understand this. If thou had known the day of thy visitation. See, the cities are about to be burnt with fire. Babylon is to be burnt with fire, but how many people are going to discern it and understand? As it says in Ezekiel 16, show my people their abominations, cause her to know her abominations. Thou trusted in thy own beauty and played the harlot. There is an abomination that maketh desolate, and playing the harlot because of thy renown, pouring out your fornications on everyone that passed by. Church and state union is an abomination. But not only is it an abomination, but let me just show you what kind of abomination this is. See, in Revelation 17:16, it says the 10 horns shall make her desolate. And we're looking for a woman who's playing the harlot and caused an abomination, but this abomination is so abominable that makes her desolate. And what are the 10 horns according to Revelation 17? Verse 12 tells us that the 10 horns are 10 kings. The kings of the earth are what make her desolate, a church and state union. And then what does it say in verse 16? That she shall be made desolate, naked, shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Why is she going to be burnt with fire? We'll take a look here in a second. We'll look at the judgment. But on September 24th, 2015, the Pope was in Congress. This was the Jewish Day of Atonement. It was Judgment Day, the very day of judgment. And of course, in Revelation 17, it talks about the judgment of the great whore. But on September 25th, the next day, the Pope was in New York addressing the United Nations with respect to climate change, with respect to Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Agenda, with respect to a biodiversity plan. We'll come to this a little bit more. On this very trip, the newspapers had a name for this trip. They called it the Whirlwind New York Visit, Catholic New York. They called it the Whirlwind Visit from Pope Francis, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. They called it the Whirlwind New York Tour, CBS New York, as you see down on the left side. You'll see that it's called a Whirlwind US Visit from the Telegraph. You'll see that it's called the Whirlwind Visit from the Eyewitness ABC News. You'll see that it's called the Whirlwind Visit by Access WDUN News. You'll see that it's called his Whirlwind Papal Journey by the New York Times. You'll see that it's called the Whirlwind New York Tour by CBS New York 10. You'll see it's called his Whirlwind Visit by WNYC News. You'll see that it's called the Whirlwind of Events by Reuters of New York. You'll see that it's called the Whirlwind Trip by Fox. You'll see that it's called his Whirlwind Day by Cath News USA. You'll see that it's called After a Pope Francis Tired After a Whirlwind by USA Today. You'll see that it's called a Whirlwind Tour of New York City by the Wall Street Journal. So how does this all relate to Bible prophecy? Well, the Bible tells us of a church and state union, and that is exactly what we were supposed to watch for in Bible prophecy. Let me explain, because the 10 horns make her desolate, and we were to watch for an abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. You see, the 10 horns symbolize the 10 regions of the world, as the United Nations map spells out here, the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, and these are the 10 regions of the United Nations. But furthermore, they've mapped out every area of the world, including the United States. And in the United States, they have a simulated reserve and corridor system to protect biodiversity, where they want to keep people off limits from certain land, and they want to protect 30% of the land. It's called a 30-30 plan. And it says in the red zones down at the left corner that these red zones are going to be core reserves and corridors where little to no human use is allowed. Furthermore, in the yellow zones, they're going to be highly regulated use, which means they're going to be pretty much off limit to humans or highly regulated, so that barely any people are allowed to travel. They want to keep people into the cities, move people into these smart cities. I'll come to that in a second. But God has a call, and his call is come out of her, my people. When you see her fornicating with the kings of the earth, as it says in Revelation 17 and 18, this is the judgment of the great whore, and there is a call to come out of her. This is called Sustainable Development Agenda. It's called Agenda 2030. It's called Agenda 21 sometimes. But in this agenda, they want all the countries to commit to protection of 30% of the earth's land and oceans. They want to make it off limits to humans. And not only that, but in Montreal recently, when they had COP15, they said that they wanted 30 by 30, which would create more militarized protected areas. In other words, you want to go out of the city? No, sorry, we have military keeping you from going out into the land. We're going to keep you blocked into the cities and locked into the cities. And that is the plan. Into the cities. That's Babylon's message. When God has a call, come out of her. She's about to be burnt with fire. There's about to be a new economic system put into place, as the World Economic Forum even is calling for G20 Smart Cities Alliance on technology governance. That's AI. That's all bots, robotic government. And if you don't go along with it, guess what? You don't eat. you don't have a place to live. You can't get a job. You can't live and survive in the new world that they want to create. And it says cities are racing to zero, and all the governors are coming together to enforce the climate action. But not only are the governments coming together to do this, but also, of course, the churches. Multi-faith community mobilizes to preserve creation ahead of COP15 Biodiversity Summit. Remember, the map of the United States to protect biodiversity, and this is of course sun worship. If you look carefully, COP27, you'll see Aten, the sun god. It's Sunday keeping. It's not the true worship of God. The papacy worships a false god and another god, and so do all the other churches that follow in her ways and worship the same God, which I believe to be mentioned in Daniel 11:36-39. He shall exalt a strange god, which is the Trinity, which comes from ancient Babylon, from Nimrod, Tammuz, and Semiramis, and that is the gods of Babylon. But COP27, Pope Francis wanted to invite people to ecological conversion, to convert to their religion. That's what this is. This is a religion, and they're telling us that we have sins of emissions. Sins of emissions means we're actually emitting too much CO2 into the air. And so then 10+1 climate commandments, when they came together at Mount Sinai for COP27, it was about bringing together new commandments, including commandments to keep the Sabbath, worship the sun god, honor Mother Earth, and all these other things. These are commandments that are given by the world, and these are not God's commandments. And if you'd like to see more of this, I've got other videos that I've already done on some of these things. And if you appreciate this video, please like this video, and also please share these things with other people. Help people to come to these truths and understand some of these truths, especially with relation to the Bible, because the Bible tells us there is present truth that we need to understand for this day. Also, I've got many Bible studies on my other channel which you can check out as well, which go deep into these issues. They know not the hour of their visitation. Jesus wept over those who were not knowing what was coming. What about us? Are we weeping? Are we giving the loud cry? Are we calling people out of Babylon? Are we calling people out of the cities? Are we calling people to come to understand what the message is for this time? Anyways, guys, thanks for being here. Subscribe, like, share, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks again, and God bless you.